Picture this, a dimly lit gym in Los Angeles, the kind where legends train in silence. The air smells of worn leather and decades of sweat. In one corner, a man moves through his stretches with the grace of a panther. Jean-Claude Van Damme, muscles rippling, every movement a statement. In the other corner sits Chuck Norris, quiet, unassuming, watching with eyes that have seen more than most could imagine. Van Damme doesn't notice him at first. When he does, something shifts in the atmosphere. Pride meets humility. Flash meets substance. What happens next would become the story whispered in martial arts circles for years to come. A lesson about the difference between showing off and showing up. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. And sometimes you don't realize your mistake until it's too late to take it back. It was a Tuesday evening when Jean-Claude Van Damme walked into Master Chen's gym on Sunset Boulevard. He'd just wrapped a successful film, his face plastered on billboards across the city, his signature split becoming as iconic as any move in action cinema. He felt invincible, and why wouldn't he? At 42, he was still in peak condition, still capable of kicks that defied physics and strikes that could crack concrete. The gym was nearly empty. A few dedicated students worked the heavy bags in the back. Master Chen, an elderly Korean instructor with hands like iron and a reputation for training champions, nodded at Van Damme's entrance. They had an understanding. The gym was neutral ground, a sanctuary where egos were supposed to dissolve into discipline. But Van Damme was riding high that night. Success had a way of inflating the chest, of making you forget the fundamentals. As he began his warm-up routine, each kick rose higher than necessary, each punch snapped louder than needed. He was performing, even though there was barely an audience. That's when he noticed the older man sitting on the wooden bench near the window. Gray hair, simple black gi, weathered face that spoke of 1,000 battles. The man sat perfectly still, hands resting on his knees, watching everything and nothing at the same time. Chuck Norris had come to Master Chen's gym to escape. At 63, he'd earned his peace. 6-time undefeated world middleweight karate champion. Black belts in multiple disciplines. A film career that spanned decades. But more than any of that, a reputation for humility that stood in stark contrast to the internet memes that would later make him a legend. He came to this gym because nobody bothered him here. He could just be a student again, learning, growing, existing without the weight of expectation. Van Damme's eyes locked onto Chuck. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, then calculation, then that dangerous thing, the need to impress. "Chuck Norris," Van Damme called out, his accent thick, his smile wide. "I didn't know you still trained." Chuck looked up, offering a small, genuine smile. "Every day I can," he replied simply. "The body is a temple. Have to maintain it." Van Damme sauntered over, confidence radiating from every step. "You know, I've been working on some new techniques. Combinations of Shotokan and Muay Thai. Would you like to see?" Master Chen paused in his work across the room. He felt it, that subtle shift in energy that preceded disaster. He'd seen this movie before, in dozens of gyms with hundreds of young fighters who thought they had something to prove. Chuck's expression remained neutral. "I'm just here for a quiet evening, Jean-Claude. But thank you for the offer." It was a gracious deflection, an exit ramp. Van Damme should have taken it. Instead, he laughed, not maliciously, but with the blind confidence of someone who'd forgotten what true mastery looked like. "Come on, Chuck." Just a friendly demonstration. Unless. He let the implication hang in the air like smoke. The 3 students in the back stopped their training. Master Chen set down the clipboard he'd been holding. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Chuck stood slowly, his movements economical, precise. "All right," he said quietly. "A friendly demonstration." They moved to the center mat. Van Damme was already bouncing on his toes, hands up, showboating for an audience of 5. He threw a few flashy kicks, a spinning back kick that whistled through the air, a jump roundhouse that would have looked spectacular on film. "You see the extension?" Van Damme said, breathing easily. "The power comes from the hips, but the snap is all in the knee joint." Chuck nodded politely. "Good form." Van Damme's smile widened. He was just getting started. He moved into a combination, jab, cross, low kick, spinning back fist. Each technique executed with the precision of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. He wasn't trying to hit Chuck just to demonstrate, but there was something in the way he moved. Closer than necessary, faster than required, taking up more space than the moment called for. "Your turn," Van Damme said, stepping back with a theatrical bow. Chuck stood in a simple fighting stance. No bounce, no flash, just stillness. Then he moved. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't theatrical. It was simply perfect. A straight punch that traveled the shortest distance possible. A low kick that would have shattered a knee if it had connected. A takedown setup that appeared and disappeared in the span of a heartbeat. The entire sequence lasted maybe 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, everyone in the room understood the difference between technique and mastery. Van Damme's smile faltered, just for a moment, but enough. "Nice," he said, his voice slightly harder now. "But let's try with contact." Light contact, just to feel the timing. Master Chen stepped forward. "Gentlemen?" "It's okay, Master Chen," Chuck said, still calm, still centered. "Light contact is fine." What Van Damme didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was what Chuck carried with him. In his mind, Chuck was 25 again, standing in a tournament in San Jose, facing an opponent who'd talked trash all day. The guy was bigger, younger, angrier. Chuck had been tempted to match that energy, to prove something, to dominate. But his teacher, a wise old man from Okinawa, had pulled him aside before the match. "The need to prove yourself is the enemy of excellence," the teacher had said. "When you fight to show off, you've already lost. When you fight to protect, to honor the art, to simply express truth, that's when you become unstoppable." Chuck had won that match in 18 seconds, not because he was trying to humiliate his opponent, but because he'd fought from a place of absolute clarity. Now, 40 years later, standing across from a man consumed by his own legend, Chuck felt that same clarity settle over him like morning mist. They engaged again. This time Van Damme came harder, faster. A spinning hook kick aimed at Chuck's head, pulled at the last second, but with real intention behind it. A flurry of punches designed to overwhelm. A low kick that carried genuine power. Chuck moved like water. Every attack flowed past him, around him, through him. He didn't block so much as he simply wasn't where the techniques landed. And then, in the space between Van Damme's breaths, Chuck countered. A ridge hand that stopped 1 millimeter from Van Damme's throat. A foot sweep that didn't quite connect, but forced Van Damme to hop awkwardly to maintain balance. A throw setup that had Van Damme's weight shifted forward, teetering, before Chuck simply stepped away and let him catch himself. It happened 3 more times. Each time Chuck could have finished it. Each time he chose mercy. The room was silent except for Van Damme's heavy breathing. "You're holding back," Van Damme said, frustration creeping into his voice. "Yes," Chuck replied simply. "Why?" Chuck's eyes, brown and deep as ancient wells, met Van Damme's. "Because I have nothing to prove. Not to you, not to anyone in this room, not even to myself." The words landed heavier than any punch could have. Van Damme stood there, chest heaving, the reality of the situation settling over him like a heavy coat. He'd come into this gym as a star, a champion, a man at the top of his game. But in the last 10 minutes, he'd been exposed. Not as a fraud, because his skills were real, but as someone who'd confused celebrity with mastery, flash with substance. Master Chen approached, handing each of them a towel. "Pride is the heaviest weight we carry," he said to no one in particular. Van Damme bowed, deeper this time, genuine. "I apologize, Chuck. I was being an idiot." Chuck placed a hand on his shoulder. "We've all been there. I've been there. The difference is whether you learn from it." He smiled, and there was no judgment in it, only understanding. "You're a hell of a martial artist, Jean-Claude. You don't need to prove that to anyone. Just keep training, keep growing, keep honoring the art." They shook hands. The students in the back returned to their bags. The moment passed, as all moments do. But before Chuck left that night, Van Damme stopped him at the door. "How did you do it?" he asked. Stay humble, I mean, with everything you've accomplished? Chuck thought for a moment. Every morning, I wake up a white belt. Every night, I go to bed a student. The belt around my waist is just cloth. The only thing that matters is whether I'm better today than I was yesterday. Not better than anyone else. Just better than yesterday's version of me. Van Damme never forgot that night. In interviews years later, he'd reference it, carefully, respectfully, as the evening he learned the difference between being a martial artist and being a warrior. Because here's the truth they don't tell you in the movies. Real strength doesn't need an audience. Real mastery doesn't require validation. The most dangerous people in the world are often the quietest ones, the ones who have nothing to prove because they've already proven everything to the only person who matters, themselves. Van Damme had walked into that gym as a peacock, all flash and display, desperate for acknowledgement he didn't even realize he was seeking. He'd walked out as something closer to a student again, humbled not by defeat but by the presence of someone who transcended the need for victory. Chucknorris taught him something that night that no sensei ever could, that the ultimate achievement in martial arts isn't learning how to fight, it's learning when not to. So the next time you feel the urge to show off, to prove yourself, to dominate a room with your presence, remember this story. Remember that true power whispers while insecurity shouts. And remember that the most respected warrior is not the one who wins every battle, but the one who knows which battles are worth fighting in the first place. Because legends aren't made by showing off. They're forged in the quiet moments when nobody's watching.